I'm Chris. I'm Head of Technology Innovation Visual, and part of my role is helping our clients, but also our team, just understand technology, understand our use of it, how we can action it, but also to kind of like distill it down into simpler language. So what we thought would be a really good kind of starting point for today, we're going to hear the word agent an awful lot today, probably hear the word AI a few times. So I thought it'd just be good to get everybody on the same page of exactly what it is we're talking about when we talk about those things. So let's have a start with a little history lesson. So end of 2022, we had this explosion with ChatGPT, Perplexity. They both launched in sort of November, December 22. And let's be honest, they weren't great. And then 23, everybody was starting to use them. They were starting to evolve. 24 was the year of AI and everyone was talking about it. And 2025 is the year of agentic AI. So you've probably, every conference you've been to, every SaaS demo, every software product is talking about agents. And it's not just another buzzword. I think that's important to kind of talk about. It's not just about what an agent is, it's more about how it's going to integrate with our team. So Tim's already talked a bit about hybrid teams and how agents are going to fit into that. And today we're going to walk through a few examples across our talks about what that actually means to have a hybrid team. But we've moved now away from LLMs, large language models, to a world where you actually have colleagues that are doing work for you. So away from just answering questions on a kind of ad hoc basis, and instead talking about the actual delivery of work. What is an AI agent? We're talking about something that can complete tasks with a degree of autonomy, not necessarily completely autonomous, and we'll touch on that in a second. It has predetermined goals, so set by a human in this case, but it's going to perform tasks that it determines that it needs to perform to complete those goals, to achieve those goals. So in other words, humans set the goals, and then the agent independently chooses the best actions to achieve that. So fairly straightforward, except there are a few other elements. So in other words, they're team members. So this is the hybrid thing. So what we need to start thinking about as we move through today's talks is that these AI agents, they are the future of the workplace. They're going to be part of your team. They're going to sit alongside your human employees, and actually they're going to be teammates that you can brief things to. So this is why we think about agents as being sort of autonomous, because they still need that input. They still need somebody to give them their brief. They have job specs. They have that, a prompt that has been pre-written, but they are essentially waiting for a brief. They're not necessarily, and we'll talk about that in a second, they're not necessarily just going to go out and do things for you. However, I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about assistants versus agents, because I think this is where things have developed. So when we go back to what happened in 2022, that was really the start of the AI assistant. All very familiar with the chatbot interface. You go in, you ask it a question, and you get an answer. But there's a gray area there, because the AI assistant can do things for you. Create me an image, summarize this document. All of these things are outputs. It's doing work for you. But each time it's a one-off task, right? So you're going in, you're prompting it, specific requests, gives you a specific answer. An agent, on the other hand, has essentially been pre-prompted. The technology is essentially the same behind, but it's been pre-prompted of what it is you want it to do. It's got that job spec. And this is, again, coming back to that hybrid team, we really need to be thinking about giving these agents a role. So this is their job spec, this is how they fit into being a hybrid part of your team. And they're going to repeat tasks. So highly repeatable functions across your business, this is where agents are going to come in. So there's obviously some crossover. Assistants can perform tasks for you and they can give you output, and agents still need to be briefed. But there's also a gray area in between. And that's what I'm going to be talking about first, which is deterministic agents. So what is a deterministic agent? So this is something that we discussed when we were inbound. They're still autonomous, so they're still going off and doing tasks on your behalf. They still have predetermined goals, exactly as you would expect for a normal agent. But what's different with these is that they're set within an automated sequential workflow. Okay, so think automated back-end processes within your business that you don't necessarily interact with. So they might be automatically triggered out of your CRM, they might be coming out of your ESP, they might be just happening in the back end somewhere within your tech stack. And there might be one of many agents within that sequence. So you start to think about this flow of actions, and this is something that we'll come back to with Vanessa's talk later in terms of like real world use cases. But you'll have this flow of actions, and each one of those agents within there, you don't necessarily interact with, you don't necessarily brief. But the interesting thing is you have a much more controlled and repeatable output because they are being fed a very specific structured set of data, and they're giving you a very specific structured set of data. And when you put that into that sequential flow, you get kind of the power of each one of those agents amplifying the next. So a quite different way of looking at the way agents work. So let's have a little breakdown of some of those. So assistants, it's that direct interaction. So think of them as your front of house, your first point of call, something we're all very familiar with. They don't have preset goals other than the way they are actually programmed to interact with you. And we're talking about one-off tasks on an ad hoc basis, and they're really great for research. And I'm sure lots of people here are already using ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity for bits of research, for questions. Agents, on the other hand, so again, they're autonomous, repeatable functions, pre-prompted, so that's that job spec, the predetermined goals, and we really want to think of them as our colleagues. I know it sounds really odd to kind of dehumanize us, but the way to think about agents is they're allowing humans to be humans and do the things that we are essentially really good at, and agents are going to do the things in between, the things that we don't need to be doing, so they're going to amplify us. And then finally we have those deterministic agents, so set within that sequence or that workflow. And again, we'll come back to some real world examples of that because I think it will help bring that to life as we move through. And they're often one of many agents. And I think this is really important because that amplification of one agent feeding another agent, feeding something that maybe is not AI powered and is just an automated kind of logic based sequence, that string really makes these things a lot more powerful. And they're very much your back end, non-human facing, that give you that more repeatable output. So as Tim said, I think the way to look at agents is that they are doing work. That's not to say that assistants don't give you an output, but we need to think about these things as not just being search engines and research tools, although obviously there is that function. They're delivering a value and an output, and they're performing autonomously. I put autonomously a lot in this talk, and it's a word I really struggle with, so we're all growing. And that's the other thing. These things will learn and they will evolve. So as I said, in 2022, ChatGPT was pretty rubbish. What these things can do now, and you saw that clip of that Waymo, I'm glad Tim cut before the bit where it panned around to me and I'm sat there going, but they're evolving and they're evolving really, really, really fast. So it's definitely time to be looking at these things, thinking about how your team potentially gets restructured with these kind of agents coming in, but also thinking about those deterministic agents and how that automated flow is going to fit into core business processes. And we'll have some more of that later on in the day.